Most people believe that medical checkups are always a good idea. For most of our lives, that's true. Catching problems early often means saving our health. But here's the surprising truth: after a certain age, not all medical tests are helpful. In fact, some of them can do more harm than good. If you're in your 70s or 80s, you might have noticed that doctors often recommend routine screenings or scans, even when you feel perfectly fine. But what nobody talks about is how these tests can sometimes lead to unnecessary stress, risky procedures, and even serious complications that can take away your independence. I know it sounds strange. We've all grown up believing that more checkups mean better health. But in your golden years, things are different. Your body doesn't react the same way it did at 40 or 50. Some tests that were once useful can now put you through uncomfortable, exhausting, or even dangerous experiences, without really improving your quality of life. This isn't about ignoring your health. It's about protecting it. More and more doctors in the US, especially those who work with older adults, are starting to admit that a one-size-fits-all approach to medicine doesn't work after 70. Real healthcare at this stage of life means making careful, thoughtful choices, not just saying yes to every scan and test. In this video, we're going to talk honestly about 5 common medical tests that older adults may want to avoid. These are tests that can create more problems than they solve, and even many experienced doctors say no to them for themselves. I'll explain why these tests are often pushed so strongly, what hidden risks they carry, and what safer, smarter options you have instead. By the end of this video, I want you to feel informed, confident, and in control of your health decisions. You deserve care that respects your age, your body, and your quality of life, not care that steals your energy or peace of mind. Before we start, I want to hear from you. Have you ever gone through a medical test that left you feeling worse instead of better? Share your experience in the comments. I read every single one, and your story might help someone else watching this video feel less alone. Point 1: the colonoscopy trap. Let's start with one of the most common tests doctors recommend, the colonoscopy. For decades, it's been called the gold standard for preventing colon cancer. If you're in your 50s or 60s, this test can be life-saving. But once you're in your 70s or 80s, the story changes, and it's not something most people are told. A colonoscopy isn't a simple blood test. It's a complicated procedure that starts with a tough preparation. You have to completely empty your intestines by drinking large amounts of strong laxatives. For older adults, this can be exhausting and dangerous. Dehydration happens quickly, and it can make you feel weak, dizzy, or confused. Some people even faint or fall during the prep. Then comes the procedure itself. You're usually sedated, and while younger people recover fast, sedation lasts longer in older bodies. It can leave you groggy, disoriented, or off balance for days. That increases the risk of falls, one of the biggest threats to independence for seniors. And here's the part most people don't think about: what happens after they find something small, like a tiny polyp. These little growths often take 10 to 15 years to turn into anything dangerous, if they ever do. But once a polyp is found, it usually leads to more tests, biopsies, or even surgery. For someone in their late 70s or 80s, the risks of those follow-up procedures can outweigh the benefits, especially if you've never had symptoms in the first place. I once heard a story about an active 81-year-old man who had no digestive problems at all. His doctor suggested a routine colonoscopy. The prep left him weak and dehydrated. He had the test, which came back completely clear. But that night, he got up to use the bathroom, felt dizzy, fell, and broke his hip. Months of rehab followed, all because of a test he didn't really need. The truth is, if you've had normal colonoscopies in the past and don't have new symptoms or a strong family history of colon cancer, you may not need another one after 70 or 75. Today, there are safer, simpler options, like stool tests you can do at home, that can check for problems without putting your body through such stress. Remember, protecting your health after 70 doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes, it means being wise enough to say, no, thank you, and choosing the option that keeps you safe, steady, and living life on your own terms. Point 2, the full-body scan dilemma. There's something very tempting about the idea of a full-body scan. Machines like CT or MRI can look through you from head to toe and show every little detail inside your body. It sounds comforting, almost like buying peace of mind. But after 70, these scans can turn from reassurance into a real source of trouble. Here's why. Full-body scans are extremely sensitive. They pick up everything: tiny shadows, small nodules, little cysts that most of us carry without ever knowing it. In younger adults, finding something early can be helpful. But for older adults, these incidental findings often cause unnecessary alarm. Doctors see a tiny spot on the kidney or a small nodule in the lung, and suddenly you're on a medical treadmill: more tests, biopsies, maybe even surgery. The problem is that many of these little findings would never have caused harm in your lifetime. They grow very slowly, if at all. But the emotional toll of hearing, "we found something," is heavy. Anxiety creeps in. Sleep disappears. Every day becomes a waiting game for the next test result. I've met people in their late 70s who went from feeling perfectly healthy to living in fear, just because of a tiny dot on a scan that was likely harmless. Then there's the physical risk. Follow-up procedures like biopsies or surgeries are much harder on the body after 70. A lung biopsy can lead to a collapsed lung. Kidney procedures can cause bleeding or infections. And even lying still in a scanner for a long time can be painful for aging joints. One woman I met at a senior wellness seminar shared her story. She was 78, walked every day, and had no health complaints. A mobile clinic offered her a discount full-body scan. They found a tiny growth on her kidney, so small it might never have mattered. But the fear was enough to push her into surgery. Months later, she was still recovering, weaker than before, and wondering if it had all been worth it. Full-body scans aren't cheap either. Medicare or insurance often won't cover them unless there's a clear medical reason. Many seniors pay out of pocket, thinking they're investing in safety, when in reality, they're buying stress and opening the door to procedures that may not improve or extend their lives. Here's the lesson: after 70, healthcare is less about hunting for every possible problem and more about protecting your well-being today. Listening to your body, noticing real symptoms, and having open conversations with your doctor are far more valuable than chasing shadows on a screen. Point 3, the cardiac stress test concern. Heart health is something we all think about as we get older. We've all heard the scary stories: someone seemed fine one day and had a heart attack the next. So it feels natural to want to check your heart with a stress test. Doctors have been recommending them for decades, and many seniors agree without a second thought. But after 70, these tests can sometimes create more problems than they solve. A cardiac stress test usually involves walking on a treadmill or taking medication to make your heart work harder while doctors monitor your heart's rhythm and blood flow. On the surface, it sounds smart: push the heart a little and see how it performs. But here's the hidden truth: older hearts naturally change with age. Arteries stiffen, electrical patterns shift, and recovery slows down. These changes don't always mean disease, but they can make the test look abnormal. And that's where the trouble starts. A false alarm on a stress test can send you down a long, stressful path of more tests, angiograms, catheterizations, or even stent placements, when you had no symptoms to begin with. Each of these procedures comes with real risks for older adults: bleeding, kidney damage from contrast dyes, infections, or long recovery times. I remember a story about a 75-year-old man named Harold. He felt great, took daily walks, played with his grandkids, and had no chest pain or shortness of breath. During a routine physical, his doctor suggested a treadmill stress test, just to be safe. The test showed a small irregularity, which led to a heart catheterization and eventually a stent. After the procedure, Harold developed complications from the blood thinners he now had to take, internal bleeding that sent him back to the hospital. What started as a simple check ended with months of stress and a lower quality of life. The American Heart Association and many geriatric specialists now agree, if you don't have heart symptoms, routine stress tests after 70 rarely improve outcomes. They don't prevent heart attacks in healthy seniors and can trigger a cascade of unnecessary treatments. A better approach is to focus on how your heart actually feels during daily life. Do you have chest discomfort, unexplained fatigue, or shortness of breath during normal activity? If not, lifestyle habits like regular walks, balanced meals, staying social, and managing stress will do more for your heart than a treadmill hooked to wires ever could. After 70, protecting your heart is less about chasing every possible problem and more about preserving your energy, independence, and peace of mind. Point 4. The hidden risks of repeat colonoscopies. Let's talk about something that most older adults are rarely told. Repeated colonoscopies after 70 can be more harmful than helpful. Colonoscopies have been a gold standard for catching colon cancer early. If you're in your 50s or 60s, this test can save lives. But after 70, especially if your previous colonoscopies were clear, the risks often start to outweigh the benefits. Here's why. A colonoscopy is not a simple test. The preparation alone can be rough. You have to drink a large amount of strong laxatives to completely empty your intestines. For an older body, this can be a serious challenge. It often causes dehydration, weakness, dizziness, or even confusion. I've heard many seniors say that the prep was harder on them than the actual procedure. Then comes the sedation. As we age, our bodies process medications more slowly. That means the sedatives used for colonoscopy can linger longer in your system, leaving you groggy or off balance for days. This greatly increases the risk of falls. A single fall in your 70s or 80s can change your independence overnight. There's also something called post-procedure cognitive fog, where your memory or focus feels blurry for weeks after anesthesia. For many older adults, this is scarier than the procedure itself. And here's the part few people talk about, the timeline of benefit. Colonoscopies are designed to find polyps that could turn into cancer in 10 to 15 years. But if you're 75 or 80 and you've had 2 or 3 clear colonoscopies in the past, the chance that a new polyp will develop into cancer during your lifetime is extremely low. Meanwhile, the risks of complications, like bleeding, perforation of the intestine, or bad reactions to sedation, are higher than ever. I remember hearing about an older teacher named Elaine, 78 years old. Her last 2 colonoscopies were normal, but her doctor suggested another one, just to be thorough. During the procedure, there was a small tear in her intestine, a rare but serious complication. She needed emergency surgery and spent weeks in the hospital. She later said, "I wish I had known I could have said no." Modern medicine now offers safer options, like stool-based tests you can do at home. These are non-invasive, don't require sedation, and are often enough for seniors without new symptoms or family history concerns. The truth is, protecting your health after 70 is about making wise, selective choices, not automatically repeating every test you did when you were younger. Sometimes the bravest choice is to prioritize comfort, safety, and the life you enjoy today. Point 5. The problem with routine cardiac stress tests. Heart disease is one of the biggest fears for many older adults. We hear about heart attacks happening out of the blue, and it's natural to want reassurance. That's why many doctors offer routine cardiac stress tests, either on a treadmill or using medication, to see how your heart performs under pressure. But here's the truth, for seniors without symptoms, these tests often create more problems than they solve. A stress test is meant to detect blocked arteries or reduced blood flow to the heart. In theory, this sounds like a smart way to prevent emergencies. But as we age, our hearts and arteries naturally change. The heart might beat a little differently, arteries become stiffer, and recovery is slower. These changes are often normal, but on a stress test, they can look like warning signs. producing a false positive. And once a false positive appears, a whole chain of medical events can begin: angiograms, catheterizations, and sometimes stent placements or even surgeries. Each of these comes with serious risks for older adults: bleeding, kidney problems from contrast dye, infections, and long recovery periods. I once spoke with a 76-year-old man named Richard. He felt healthy, walked daily, and had no chest pain or shortness of breath. His doctor suggested a routine stress test, just to be careful. The test showed a minor irregularity, which led to a catheterization and a stent. Soon after, Richard developed internal bleeding from the blood thinners he now had to take. He spent weeks in the hospital and months in recovery, all because of a test he didn't really need. Here's the key: if you don't have heart symptoms, routine stress tests rarely change your long-term health. The American Heart Association and many cardiologists now recommend against them for symptom-free seniors. They don't prevent heart attacks and often lead to unnecessary interventions. Instead, focus on what truly keeps your heart healthy: regular walks, light exercise, healthy meals, social connection, and managing stress. Pay attention to your body. If you feel chest pressure, unusual fatigue, or shortness of breath, that's the time to get checked. After 70, the goal isn't to chase every possible problem. It's to protect your energy, independence, and peace of mind. Sometimes, the best care is knowing when to say no to tests that do more harm than good. Conclusion: growing older doesn't mean you have to surrender your health to endless tests and procedures. After 70, real wellness is about making smart, thoughtful choices, not automatically saying yes to every screening. Many routine tests that once made sense can now bring more stress, risk, and recovery time than benefit. The key is simple: listen to your body, not just the machines. Focus on staying active, eating well, and enjoying the moments that truly matter. And before agreeing to any test, ask yourself, will this really improve my life, or just add worry? If this made you think differently about your health, share one thing you learned today in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts.